Alright, let's talk about the 3 levels of wealth that you as a private individual can find yourself in during your lifetime. Most of us, we start off at the bottom level, nothing. The banks don't want to talk to us. They try to redirect us to an online portal or put you in a phone queue for 3 hours, offer you a loan, a mortgage with high rates, and just for a tiny amount that's based on your income. And I don't need to go too much into detail on this first entry level where we all find ourselves. Let's instead focus on the 2 other ranks of the ladder so you can better understand. Alright, this is what you get once you have a bit more money, because trust me, the services that banks provide is very, very different once they actually want you as a client. Alright, so the middle level, that's very achievable for most of us. It's different in the United States than in Europe. I'm gonna get to that. But the mid level here is something called private banking, and you need to have $1 million here in America for entry level with Wells Fargo in this case. For Goldman Sachs, 10 million. It's just different levels. In Sweden, we start off at $250,000 roughly, up to about 500,000 as the minimum for some of the more exclusive ones. So roughly half that requirements that Americans have we see over in Europe, just a bit lower requirements, although the services are quite similar. I'm comparing the Swedish experience here to some of the American ones. So investment management, they list here. Some alternative investment access. They have some exclusive funds that they let people invest in, that's managed by hedge fund in some type of partnership, and just general advice in this category. And this is something that most of these private banks have also in Europe. I have not used this too much myself. I have used some other services though that we're gonna get to down below, but this one can be very helpful, say if you are a business owner and you get a windfall from selling out and all of a sudden you sit there with a few $1,000,000 and you're not really sure what to do because your wealth did not come from investments. Then of course there's help to be had in terms of financial planning. And just, be a little careful, I would say. Look a bit at the fees as well. More complex is not necessarily better here in terms of returns. It's a bit of an inverse relationship in investments in some cases where less work can lead to better results. Very counterintuitive. Trust and estate services, so some tax planning in this area, some legal planning as well. I would say that in terms of the tax planning, from what I've seen in Europe, it's usually not the best. It's usually outsourced, so you get a meeting with somebody in the big four. I'm not gonna name and shame anything, but when I tried this out, I was not too happy with it. It was very generic advice, and it was not very tailored to my specific situation and the goals that I have. But what can you expect on a entry level? I'm sure that the highest level for this is a lot better. Perhaps in America also, for more advanced clients, they can help out with citizenship as well. That's definitely on the higher ranks, but a bit uncertain about this for American private banking. We do not have this in Sweden as part of the services. Also, in terms of lending and credit, you can lend towards the assets that you have, the stocks that you have. They have some different rule for this. For example, in my case, I can only lend against Swedish assets. I get 0 lending power towards foreign assets, so for example American stocks. I'm sure this is very different for Americans, and if you know, please comment below to let me know. And you also get for real estate, you have better rates in terms of mortgages if you want to use it for example, an investment property. This is more okay, whereas for the first level, where you just walk into the bank and you have nothing, they are not going to give you a loan for an investment property in Sweden, for example. They want you to be the main resident, and I see the same when I just walk into a bank here in Ireland. I tried to apply for a mortgage a year ago just to see how much I would get, and you have to check this box that says, are you the primary residence? Do you plan to live here, basically? So that's the type of service that you get there, just better mortgage. And this makes perfect sense. You have a bunch of assets with the bank. They see that you are good for it. They really want you as a client. You are a safe person to lend to. The risk that you are going to default and not be able to pay back, and the bank's going to have to seize the property and just auction it out, is a lot lower than for the average person. So lower risk for the bank, of course, then they can do a better mortgage rate for you. And I think that a lot of people have it as a goal that they really want to buy a property for some reason. That's a big goal for a lot of people. I don't really understand why. It's not the best financial decision, but I guess it's sentimental. So if you want a extremely good rate on your mortgage, well, become a private banking customer in that case. Some charity help, and that's basically it. So minimum investment 1 million in this case, and for Goldman Sachs here 10 million, and different levels here. Although if we look at Goldman Sachs, we can also take a look at something called family offices. And I've only ever heard about one person who had access to a family office in Sweden. He would get a call in his car from his advisor in terms of alternative assets, and the guy would say, do you want to invest in a paddle court? When the sport was just coming to Sweden, starting to get popular. All of those courts, they do not build themselves. It's an alternative investment for very wealthy people in some cases. Of course, there could be a bunch of friends who go together and everybody does a loan somehow, get it together, build something out. But in a lot of cases, you need funding, and that comes from wealthy individuals in some cases, and in cases like that example, from a family office. And in this case, you basically assemble a team around you in some way, such as we see here in this survey method from Goldman Sachs, where they survey the views of family office decision makers, so frequently chief investment officer. So actually a person that is hired to manage all of this money. Usually a lot of these have more than $1 billion in assets, although in Sweden I have seen this type of service being offered at 100 million Swedish. This was back in 2016, so inflation has done its thing. Perhaps it's higher now. It's a bit outdated information, but this was offered as more basic advisory at a wealth management firm that I worked at a young age. But this is the absolute highest level of banking, if you can say so. You have a team around you that help you tailor your goals, not only in terms of just investments, but diversifying it across countries. For example, if we take a look at a thing called the Panama Papers here, some documents that contained personal financial information about wealthy individuals and public officials. This is not your local PM in England who says higher taxes for everybody, and there was a guy like that, and he has some assets that he hide from taxes. He's not doing this himself. He has help from a organization, from a team, to set up tax structure like this to shelter it, legal advice, and also in terms of planning to get citizenship, planning for donations. You might have heard about how the artwork schemes work. A friend of mine from university, his mom had a gallery, so you would see that wealthy people would purchase this art under advice and show it around at some museums and then donate it back, and they have donated $50 million and it's a tax write-off. And it's just such a complex environment and a very, very tailored offering. Anything can be done here, and this is such an extreme level. Back in 2016, when I worked a little bit with this, I was not allowed to sit in on the meetings when it was for family office. So it's a very obscure part of finance. It's a part of it. It's there. It exists. You can see it in terms of the Panama Papers. I've seen it in terms of the service being offered. You can read about it here on websites such as Goldman Sachs Family Office. But exactly what you get is very, very hard to know for somebody who's not on that tier. In terms of the mid-tier, I think it's a tier that most of us can get to. I think it's perfectly reasonable to be happy and stay there. I don't think that everybody needs to strive to be, Bill Gates. Basically, you need to take some extreme risks to be able to get there. But, for the mid-tier, for private banking, I feel like you get all of the services that you need. For example, in my case, I also got help transferring vested equities as a part of a former compensation package that I have. So I had a bunch of equity that had vested in an account, and it's a bit annoying, you have some assets there, you have some pensions in another place, and you have this asset sprawl, as you say, and it's getting harder and harder to keep track on. Well, private banks also help you collect this. They write the letters to other institutions and help you transfer shares or funds or whatever it might be that you have at other institutions. So just transferring it all together and making it easier for you to actually get an overview. I know this can be a problem for some people who job hop around a lot and they have some pension here and there and different vested equities with different tech companies that just lay in accounts, perhaps one that's based in the United States or something like this. The tech company has made a deal with some bank to have it like that, and those type of situations, they actually can help you navigate even at the lower service level of private banking, which is the one I would be in. It's the first tier. Was close to get to the platinum tier here at the peak of the bull market before macro turned, but yeah, only difference then, once you have more and more money with the bank in terms of private banking, is just a little bit better rates and just a little bit better of all of these things that I already described in this video. So I hope you found this video to be entertaining and educational. We talked about the 3 different levels of wealth that you can find yourself in, the 3 different service levels of banking, one could possibly say. Perhaps I make a title, something like that, That's been it for this video, and as always, hope you guys make a ton of money, whatever investments you decide to make. Take care now, bye bye.